What is up, Blue Demon fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Blue Demon Banter podcast brought to you by We Are DePaul. And we have a lot in store today with two fantastic guests. We have senior writer Dan Stack from We Are DePaul and Jaden Daly, who he's well known in the Big East basketball. He knows a lot. How are we doing today, gentlemen?
Good.
Joey, thank you so much for having me on, brother. My pleasure to come on and talk with you, and hopefully we can make this a little more of a recurring thing moving forward.
Yes, sir, Jaden. It was I know both you guys were at that game, and we'll just get right into it. You guys were both at the game, St. John's versus DePaul at Queens, and I want to give Dan a chance here on just some immediate thoughts. What did you kind of see from DePaul in that game against St. John's on Tuesday night?
A little bit of good and a little bit of bad. They certainly look like they belong a lot more than they did last year when they were just blitzed out of the court right away. I had flashbacks when they went up 18 in the first half, but credit to DePaul, they made it respectable by halftime and getting down to eight, and they gave you enough hope that they could possibly get back in the game. But it was just, one time it got down to 7 points midway through the second half, and But St. John's is a superior team. There's no harm in that, and especially losing on the road. It was expected. We covered. We did a little bit. We only lost rebounding to a much better rebounding team by 4 rebounds. We had more points in the paint, or tied with points in the paint, which is very encouraging. And they have DePaul had more second gen points. And St. John's, give credit to them. They were super hot when they were usually not hot during the season, and that was the difference in the game. They shot like 45%, and we shot like 27%, and that was basically the difference in the game. And I was speaking to Jaden this way, but I didn't get your take on the mean. So go to Jaden. Your assessment of DePaul in that game?
Well, what I did see from DePaul, I thought they were a lot better than they were last year, but still a lot of things that need to be worked on. I do like the foundation. Having Gunn and Blocker back is a big help. Benson as well. Caleb Banks really impressed me. This is the first time I really got a chance to take a look at him for more than a couple of minutes, and I think he could really be something moving forward if DePaul can work out whatever kinks it still has and maybe be like that Elijah Fisher kind of option on the wing, maybe as a three or a four, almost like what DePaul had against Creighton last year in the Big East tournament.
Yeah, I think it was tough watching that game because it felt like they were never dead. Like they were hanging in there. And I give DePaul props and Holtman for getting his guys ready. The start of the game wasn't ideal, but I think they really locked in. And there was a chance when they cut it to 8 in the second half, and they were there. At the end of the day, St. John's just the better team. And like you said, Jaden, I thought it was an impressive performance from Caleb Banks, who I asked Holtman all the time about Banks. Earlier in the year, he said he needs a motor. He needs to be better in all facets of the game, rebounding. And it feels like he was DePaul's, best rebounder in that game. He had 10 rebounds in that game, and then the scoring offensively, 19 points, 8 of 16 shooting. And he felt like it was more aggressive on, attacking the basket, getting to the line, and he hit 3 of 5 from 3. So I thought Caleb Banks was kind of the highlight of the night for DePaul. And I also want to give credit to Layden Blocker. It wasn't the best shooting night for Layden Blocker, 2 for 12 from the field, but he continued to impact the game in the, dishing assist area. Had 7 assists in that game. So I thought that was a good thing from Layden, even though the shot's not falling, still making plays, still doing a lot of great things. And I think I saw something out of DePaul. Obviously, a loss is not great, but I think it says a lot that they were able to cover. They stayed with St. John's, and I want to get both of your guys' thoughts, especially Jaden. I want to get your thoughts, Jaden, on what the heck Dylan Darling in that game came in 1 for 15 from three, and he lit it up from three. I just want to get your thoughts on what you saw out of him and what was that from him, that
Oh,
outburst.
I'll let him. I'll let him.
Well, I,
I'll let him answer. I just want to punch. I don't want to interject, but because Steve, our editor and publisher, wanted you to know that he has a list of punchable faces that he goes. And Dylan Darlin joined Travis Diener and maybe JP McCura is one of the punchable faces, and I just wanted to say that too.
Wow.
Wow.
But yeah, Jaden, I want to get your thoughts on that and just where that came from in that game.
I like Dylan. He's a good kid, great character. His father is James Darling, the former New York Jets linebacker,
Oh,
if you remember him
yeah.
from the late 90s, early 2000s. And after the game against Iona on Saturday, Rick Pitino had mentioned he wanted to get back in the gym with Darling and give him a total makeover on his shot. He said he needed to develop more of an arc on his jumper. And whatever he did in the 72 hours between the Iona game and the DePaul game obviously worked. Darling knocked down both of his first two 3-point attempts, made 3 out of 5 for the game, and then after the game said that Patino just wanted him to play with confidence. So it was a lab session and a pep talk that kind of inspired his point guard to come through and attack the game, take over. He got 6 rebounds, and more importantly, he drew 6 fouls for a 5'11 guard who
Hmm.
has to attack the basket against a bigger physical type of player in the Big East. That's an encouraging sign from him as conference play heats up. You're going to want to see that against some of the more physical front lines, having someone who's not afraid to take it to the rack, who's fearless in the moment of truth. I think this was the first step in what could be an underrated year. You look at all the talent St. John's has with Ejiofor, with Hopkins, with Mitchell, and Sellers and Sannon, the two other transfers they brought in. Dylan Darling might be the best one or the most valuable one out of all of them by the time everything's said and done.
Yeah, Dylan Darwin had 17 points, led all Red Storm in scoring in that game, and he really, I felt like he gave really St. John's a boost, and when he came off the bench, and I thought for the most part DePaul did a nice job against Zuby. Zuby still made an impact in the game, but 9 points, 3 of 8 shooting, 7 rebounds, like obviously he's gonna put up numbers, but I thought NJ Benson did a nice job. And I thought Fabian did a nice job in his 15 minutes. I guess, Dan, this was the first time you've seen Fabian play in person. I guess what was just kind of your thoughts in his 15 minutes of action there? 2 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists.
He's still a little bit raw, but possesses nice skills because he's very coordinated for guys' size, and like they always say, the big thing. I might have said this on an earlier podcast when we were scouting him. You got to look at the feet and the hands, and he's got good footwork and good hands. He's got to be a little more. He's very timid right now, and he came in late too, and we didn't even think he was going to play this year. So he's just getting his bearings. You're just seeing that he's just scratching the surface of his potential. He's got to be more assertive under the basket. He's very not strong to the basket. He always likes to just lay it in, tap it in. He just didn't go. He doesn't really go hard like a Benson does. Benson goes like full throttle. He's like
Hmm.
complete opposite. But yeah, I'm liking what we're getting from Fabian and what we can get from him a few years from now. If he just keeps up this growth, and I'm really excited about his potential.
Yeah, I think what it got me so mad in that game when I know you guys remember when he laid it up instead of just like dunking it and then he missed it and then I was like like just but that's obviously that's growing pains with a freshman who really only came here in September. So he's only been in the States for a couple months. He's gonna get better, he's gonna improve. And I've seen a lot of solid things from him. Obviously, like you said, he's very raw. He's just gonna improve as time goes on, but I think he's gonna be a very impactful, part of the DePaul as the season goes on and including next year. But Jaden, from somebody who doesn't keep in touch with DePaul and all that, I guess what was your impressions of DePaul, the team that Coltman has kind of built this year?
Well, after the Creighton game last year in the Big East tournament, that was a strong foundation, and I think he's picked up where he left off, and that's something that this program hasn't had in probably 15, maybe even closer to 20 years. You go back to the end of the Jerry Wainwright years before you could find any kind of real direction surrounding DePaul. So I look at Holtman and I see what he's done, what he's looking to do here. Obviously, the Big East is going to be a monster in the middle of the pack, but a lot of encouraging signs, even if they're still a year away from being a year away, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, yeah. I want to get where do you think after watching them play on Tuesday and obviously all your knowledge of Big East basketball, where do you kind of see them finishing this year in the Big East?
Probably eight or nine.
Okay.
I look at some of the other. I think Xavier's going to have a long season in conference. Butler is maybe a little better than I expected. You also look at Marquette, who's going to struggle and
Hmm.
struggle tonight as we record this,
Yep.
losing to Creighton. Uh, Xavier lost to Creighton. Marquette lost to Georgetown. I stand corrected there. But
Yeah.
the opportunity is there for DePaul to really jump out of the cellar. I didn't think they were going to finish 11th at the start of the year. I still don't. But I think they can work their way into that 8-9 game, that first game at MSG.
Yeah.
I'll ask you a question, Jaden. Do you? This is. I think it's a really tiered kind of Big East. I think UConn is even a tier above St. John. Do you agree with that?
I would, Dan. I think UConn right now is in a class by itself in the conference. And I think St. John's is too, for that matter. I don't think the third best team, whether it's Seton Hall, whether it's Villanova,
Well, that was what I was
has
going to get
proven it
to. Yeah, I was
has
going to say.
proven
I think
itself
it's
to
1, 2, and
be
then I think it's a 1, 2, and then a tier after that. So that was going to be my next question. Would you still think it's Creighton is the best, or is it you got a sleeper team like Villanova or Seton Hall?
right now. I would say it could be Seton Hall. I want to give Creighton the benefit of the doubt because McAndrew was hurt and McDermott is still trying to find his way through his rotation. And then Villanova has the pieces, but doesn't have a quality win yet. Lost to BYU by 5, and then got drilled by Michigan last week. So I need to see Villanova against a team of equal footing before I
Yeah.
determine whether or not they're as good as I think they can be. But I think UConn and St. John's are in two separate tiers by themselves ahead of everybody else. Then you have that Seton Hall, Villanova, maybe Creighton Butler group at 5 and 6, and then
Right.
everybody else after that.
Yeah, I think yeah, definitely UConn is in a tier of its own. And before we preview that game, guys, if you are, a big DePaul basketball fan, be sure to subscribe to our free newsletter at wearedepaul.com. We are our writers here, Dan, myself, Scott, Steve, we're all, very hard at work getting you the best DePaul content, DePaul news, each and every game leading up to games. So be sure to follow our free newsletter, which is in your inbox every morning. WeAreDePaul.com is completely free. You don't want to miss out on that. All your DePaul news come to WeAreDePaul.com. But, you know, DePaul had a very tough start. Obviously, we all knew it was going to be a tough start for DePaul in Big East play, starting with, St. John's, which they lost to. And they have a big game on Sunday against the UConn Huskies, ranked number 5. Jaden, I want to get your thoughts. I know you talked a little bit about UConn. They're kind of in their own tier in the Big East, but just what is it about this UConn team this year that makes them so good?
The defense is back where it belongs, where it should be, where it is where Dan Hurley wants it to be. A top 10 caliber defense that struggled last year with Liam McNeely injured and a lot of players miscast and maybe out of position in terms of what kind of a role they needed to provide. Now UConn has the pieces. Silas Demery Jr. is a lockdown defender at point guard. Malachi Smith is maybe the best closer in the conference, and he's coming off the bench. You look at what Alex Caravan brings as a senior who's been with the program for 4 years, and the Terrace Free Jr. Eric Ryba combination that is going to be for UConn, almost like what the Adama Sanogo Donovan Clingan group was in 2023. Ryba's a freshman, so he's still got some work to do. And then Braylon Mullins is still working his way back into being 100% and being an everyday player as well. So there's been some growth. There's been some strides made on the defensive front. I think that's where UConn is much better than a year ago, where DePaul actually gave the Huskies a game. That was when McNeely injured his ankle.
Yep.
So DePaul has its work cut out for them. If they can stop UConn and make the Huskies work for what they have, it could be a long day, but I think you're playing to keep the margin on the scoreboard respectable at the end of the day.
Yeah, UConn is 11-1 right now and will enter, that matchup at 11-1. And they've played a gauntlet schedule and they've done tremendous work. They beat a ranked Florida team, beat a ranked Kansas team, they beat a ranked Illinois team. Their only loss was to, Arizona, who, might be the best team in the country, and then they beat ranked BYU at the time. So UConn's very good. We
And
know this.
that Arizona loss came without Tarris Reed.
Yes, exactly. So this is a UConn team that's definitely a top five team in the country. So Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Do you give DePaul any chance in this game?
Hmm. I don't know. Not really. I mean, like maybe they'll cover. I don't know what the spread will be. I'm going to guess like on the road against St. John's, they were 18 and a half. I'm going to probably give them like a 14 point spread right now. Um, but yeah, we just got to rebound the ball like we did at St. John's, and we like I said, they're one of the better rebounding teams, and we just only lost by four. So we're doing better on the glass, especially after how Caleb Banks is playing the last week. He's been a revelation. If he does this consistently, we're gonna give teams scares because that was missing the whole preseason, the non-conference portion. Banks was just invisible at times, and he got like sometimes he would get like less than 10 minutes a game in from the couple of games he had. We need his hustle. We need all the big guys. We need Fabian Flores. This is a very daunting matchup for him, going against their bigs like Reed and Ribe, which is funny. I think that Ribe was when he was a junior in high school, he was heavily recruited by Chris Holtman, and they had him projected to be going to Ohio State before they fired him prior to his junior season. But so a little of that irony there. So yeah, we just got to battle hard. We got to stay disciplined. Handle the ball better. Don't turn the ball over. Crash the boards. Offense should come from your defense in a game like this, and our bigs have to be elevated and rise to the occasion. I'm hoping Benson has a really good game and Flores has a nice production. So I just wanted to ask Jaden. I think when Holtman went after the season, he knew that, last season, in the Big East, they needed to be more tougher and physical. And you notice that he brought in, they're the biggest DePaul team everywhere at their average height. So you think this team is much more physical than it was last year with the additions of like Flores, and adding Banks and, you know, bringing back Benson. And also, you want to give us your 2 cents if you have any 2 cents on what you saw from Macon last year, which is only like a minute off the bench in the game against the Ball. So we still have Tim and he's still raw. So what do you think of our roster makeup going into the Big East play?
I actually covered that game that Maker played in, so
Yeah, I was there too. Yeah,
yeah,
I remember that.
my my judgment is incomplete, obviously, because he played in the final seconds of garbage time. So
Mhm.
I really don't know what to make of him. I did like what I saw from Flores in the minutes that he got last night. Obviously, whenever you have a 7 footer, that's always going to help you.
Mhm.
You want him in there, even if you're only having him out there to give five more fouls
Yeah.
against Reed and Ryba. I think he's going to serve a purpose. He'll make it easier on Benson. He'll make it easier on Theo Pierre Justin as well, with whatever minutes he gets up front. So you want to manage your size and just try not to foul everybody out against UConn. The good thing about that is UConn fouls just as much as its opponents do, if not more. So if DePaul can make free throws, they can stay within earshot for a long period of time.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game for DePaul. It's going to be a tough game. Obviously, hopefully, like you mentioned, Jaden, hopefully Teo Pierre Justin's back. He was had some shoulder soreness, Holman said, in his media availability before the St. John's game. So hopefully he's back. Doesn't seem like a long-term issue there, but hopefully he's back because DePaul needs to be at full strength if you even want to, make this game competitive because, we've talked about it. This UConn team is great. And now a little bit of a harder question, Jaden, because obviously, they're 11-1, but where do you put this, UConn team? Are they, do you anticipate them being potentially better than the 23-24 season that they won it all? Just where do you put this UConn team heading into, the start of Big East play?
I don't know if anybody could be as good as that
Mhm.
team. I think that team is one of the greatest teams in modern college
Yeah.
basketball history. So that's hard to do. I think if this team can get to maybe half of what that team was, I think Hurley will be satisfied, and I think it'll be just as fulfilling a year. I think they're a Final Four contender either way, along with Michigan, with Arizona, with the Purdue team that UConn beat in the title game 2 years ago. I think that all four of those teams are up there. If Duke can sustain momentum in the ACC, as much as it pains me to say, having grown up a Carolina fan, I think I think Duke is has as good a chance as anyone else as well to crash the party and going into Indianapolis where they've won three Final Fours three national championships this century. Maybe some more good mojo for the Blue Devils. Who knows?
Yep. Yeah, I think this UConn team is, very, very talented, very good. We all know that. And hopefully, DePaul can make them competitive. I guess at the end of the day, that's no moral victories, but staying in it with the UConn team that's, one of the best in the country is gonna be a big thing for DePaul. And we'll see what happens on Sunday, 3:30 game. And before we end this episode, I just want to get, some final thoughts from you guys. You guys were there Tuesday. I know we talked about Banks a little bit, but just both of your guys' what was one player that you guys were kind of impressed with at the game on Tuesday, and a player that you're excited to watch the rest of the season for DePaul, the rest of the year.
I'm going to go with Layden Blocker, even though I saw him last year. Tuesday night showed a different side of him, one that can control a game and not have to worry about being a scorer. He had 7 assists before he scored his first points of the night, and that was late in the second half, too. So if he can be a facilitator and get guys open, find guys shots, this Big East season has the potential to be a lot more than I think anyone would have signed up for at the start. If Blocker can keep that going and be the steady hand that this team needs to take the next step, I think this could be a much better year than I think anyone would have thought.
Dan?
Yeah, and I have to say RJ Smith because he's getting so much more confidence down the stretch. I like the what Holt's doing with the starting lineup now. I think he's got two combo guards that can interact with each other, switch on defense pretty well. Smith's a much better shooter than Blocker, and with him getting starters minutes, he's getting more confident. He was nailing a lot of threes last night, and he was clutch against Wichita State. So I think I like that starting five now. I think Macklin was hurt the last two games. I like bringing him off the bench for energy, especially on defense. So I like them switching spots, get the offense going with a more offensive player like Smith over Macklin. I'm really excited for Smith to start playing a lot more starters minutes and start on UConn.
I'm actually glad you brought up RJ Smith because I feel like he's just underrated for this DePaul team. I don't think like no one talks about him. Obviously, you have the Benson and the Gun and the blocker, and then everyone is hoping for Banks to take that next step. But no one's talking about RJ. RJ was so good in that Wichita State game, and I thought he really showed some nice things against St. John. So I do agree with you. I like the lineup that they have now. We'll see if it changes, but going with that more experienced lineup with Benson, Gunn, and Banks as the seniors, and then you have Blocker, RJ, kind of the upperclassmen juniors. So I think that's a great lineup. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned RJ because I think RJ doesn't get enough love from the fans because he has been just so consistent, so good. I think he does a lot of things well, and that's what Holtman loves, and I think Holtman really likes him as well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with DePaul, UConn Sunday. But guys, it was great having you on, Dan, Jaden. It was great having you guys on, and hopefully, we can have a DePaul win on Sunday. But as always, guys, go DePaul, go, and we'll catch you next time. Go Blue Demons.